Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to GONC, Gender Online Course. This podcast is broadcasted by Center of Gender Studies and Child, PSGA Sunan Ampel, Surabaya. Today we have Dr. Rene Davidson, a staff in Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia. She is the expert of women leadership, Middle East politics, and misinformation. Therefore, today we are going to discuss about women and misinformation. Hi Rane, how are you?
Hi, it's so lovely to see you again. I'm really well, and it's a pleasure to be chatting with you today.
Well, as the one who educating others about misinformation, could you tell me what is information?
In very simple terms, information is details or facts about somebody or something. Types of information include books, databases, websites, social media accounts. And in an ideal world, information is factual, it's reliable, and it's honest.
So then, if it is information, what is misinformation?
We are currently living in an era of information disorder, which refers to the many ways that information is being polluted by misinformation and disinformation. So to define those two terms, misinformation is false or misleading information or content that is spread by people who don't necessarily know that they're spreading false or misleading information. Disinformation, on the other hand, is false or misleading information content that is deliberately spread and is designed to cause harm. So people or groups that spread disinformation are usually motivated by a number of factors. They might spread disinformation to make money. They might spread disinformation to gain social or political influence, or they might spread disinformation just to make fun or trouble for the sake of it. So take, for example, I might want to increase my social media presence quickly. And I know that content that is, outrageous or invokes emotion is more likely to get the clicks. So I start creating content that is false. For example, I might say in a post, new research, scientists have discovered a community of aliens on Mars, and it's predicted that in the next 2 decades, they'll travel to Earth. Now that information is false, and I spread it knowing that it's false in order to boost my engagement online. That's disinformation. But the people in my social media network who then spread that information unknowing that it's false, that's when it turns into misinformation. Disinformation is created with the intent to cause harm. Misinformation is when people spread it not knowing that it's false or misleading.
Thank you, Rene. That's the questions, because now is the era of social media. So that is the thing that I want to continue asking about misinformation to you. So do you have any suggestion for us on how to get the real information and share the correct information to our society, particularly through social media? So I think all of us have social media. So then how we spread out the correct information to society through our social media?
That's a really good question, Ibu Itzna, and it's also a really important question because we know that misinformation and disinformation has very real-world consequences. We have seen people use it to try and undermine democracy, to try and undermine elections, human rights, our responses to crises like the COVID-19 pandemic, to natural disasters. And, it's always existed, but the rise of social media has allowed it to spread like wildfire. And it's really important that we understand ways that we can combat misinformation and ways that we can slow its spread. So the best advice that I can give to people, which is backed up by a lot of research, is that to learn how to identify the common tactics and techniques that bad actors use to spread misleading or false information. So I can give you some resources following our chat, but for now, I'll just outline a few of them. There are many tactics that exist out there, but I'll just go through maybe 3 of the most common. So the first is emotional language. So that refers to false information that is being created using strong emotive language that is designed to spark a reaction, usually fear or outrage. And that kind of information is appealing to bad actors because they know that it gets higher engagement online and it's more likely to be spread. The second common tactic is impersonation. So that's when bad actors present false information as credible information, and they do so using the logos or attributions of credible organizations or credible news outlets. So often you see false information in a report that has the logo, it might be false information disproving the benefits of vaccines. Now, we know that that's false based on science, but they might insert the logo of the United Nations or the World Health Organization to give it that extra credibility. Now, if we see reports or credible sources that are making outlandish claims, what I would do is if you're online, check the URL to see if, for example, is the URL of the United Nations in the URL of the fake report? Or I would switch over to a Google search and I would type in the keywords of United Nations vaccines harm to community. And if my search results don't contain the report that I've been referring to, then it's highly unlikely that the United Nations has actually endorsed or published that report. Now, those 2 things, checking the URL and doing a bit of your own research, would take about 30 seconds, a minute, but it stopped you from spreading that fake information or that false information even further. Another common tactic is presenting videos and images out of context. So we've all seen online, it's very common for people to share an image or a video next to text. Now, often bad actors we've observed during crises or highly emotional events, such as, conflict or natural disasters. We've seen bad actors spread images that contain false text within the post. So take, for example, the earthquakes that happened in Syria and Turkey last year. We found a number of posts that went viral on social media, on Twitter, Telegram, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook. And what this post contained was an image that showed a laser beam being shot into the air, alongside text that read, "The earthquakes in Turkey were man-made. They were created by the United States in a military base who, as shown in the video, in the image, shot a laser beam from the sky to create the earthquake in Turkey, to undermine the Turkish government, to undermine their economic and social stability. Now, we, which you can do yourselves, what we did is we downloaded that image and we did a reverse image search. So in Google, if you upload the image into an image search, it usually shows you where the source of that image is from. So what we found is that image had nothing to do with the United States. It had nothing to do with Turkey. It was actually Elon Musk's SpaceX craft launching into space from 2018. So the image had nothing to do with the text that was reported by the bad actors. So, but it had real world consequences. It undermined the international order. It undermined, it can sow distrust within communities. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is that when we know the tactics that are used to spread misinformation, we dramatically increase our ability to spot this content, slow its spread, and prevent ourselves from being manipulated into believing that it's factual.
Thank you very much for deep insight. I'm very happy with this kind of enlightenment. But I also want to know why women become most targeted of misinformation.
This is another really important question. So I think when we're talking about misinformation that specifically targets women, we are talking about gendered disinformation, which is a strategy against women that uses false or misleading narratives about gender roles, about gender equality, with the aim to deter women from participating in the public sphere. The strategy is also aimed at silencing women or threatening them, threatening their health and safety, whether in person or online. So the false narratives about gender are often presented with narratives on religion, race, or immigration to maximize the desired impact. So the United Nations has actually done a lot of work on gender disinformation and has found that women who work women who work in professions involving a public presence, such as politicians, journalists, artists, women's rights activists, human rights activists, are often or are particularly targeted. So some of the examples that we've seen of gender disinformation include fake videos or images that are used to discredit women. Gender disinformation campaigns can, also create myths and lies about gender equality, gender roles, and contentious gender issues.
Okay, the next question is how to prevent women from being targeted of misinformation.
So when it comes to, designing strategies to prevent misinformation targeting women, it really requires a gendered response. But I'd like to firstly point out that it really is the responsibility of social media platforms and industry bodies in ensuring that online platforms and the internet is a safe space for women to be. And so at the moment, research shows that that's not the case. So the United Nations did a study last year that found 73% of women journalists had experienced online violence. And that resulted in 20% of women journalists from removing themselves offline. And, you know, women journalists need to be online in order to advance their careers, etc. And so those statistics really show how effective gender disinformation is in silencing women. And so when it comes to creating a safe space for women online, when it comes to, you know, detecting doctored videos and images that are used to discredit women, it really is the responsibility for social media platforms and industry bodies to make sure that, you know, the internet's safe for women. But there are some definitely things at an individual level that we can be doing. So, for example, you know, firstly, education is key. So ensuring that our universities, that our workplaces, that our communities have accurate and reliable information about gender equality, about the current statistics, about gender equality, such as the gender pay gap, such as women's participation in politics, women's participation in the media. It's crucial that society has the facts on gender equality. Secondly, what we can be doing is, as I mentioned before, we can be alerting society to the common tactics that bad actors use against women and, you know, alerting them to the motivations behind why people would spread gender disinformation, you know, to silence women, to relegate them to the private sphere, to prevent them from participating in the public, you know, alerting society on what gendered misinformation is and how to spot it. Now, with these two strategies combined, that really helps to build public resilience against gendered misinformation. And essentially, if someone has the facts and if someone knows how they are trying to be manipulated by disinformation actors, they can come across misinformation against women online and say, hey, I know what you're trying to do here. I'm informed. I know how you're trying to manipulate me. So therefore, I'm not going to believe what you're trying to tell me. And I'm also not going to share what you're trying to tell me. And so one by one, that really helps to reduce the spread of gender disinformation. And the same strategy applies to other topics. So, for example, election misinformation, making sure that society is informed about when elections will take place, how elections work, how the voting system works. Because when people are trying to persuade people, you know, not to vote, or maybe the election's not happening, they already have the information there. They know to ignore, you know, misinformation on elections and democratic events. So just making sure that the public is informed, making sure that the public is informed about misinformation plays a really big role in helping to reduce the spread of misinformation.
Okay, thank you very much, Renee, for a very deep insight. I am very happy having this kind of knowledge from you. And see you.
It's my absolute pleasure, Ibu Itzna, and I hope that we get to chat again soon.
That's all for our gender online course today, and see you for the next series. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.